Thank you very much for coming to this session one. I'm going to do the moderator of this session by discussing about the possibility of the Moonshot project. And I'm a full-time executive member of the Council of Science, Technology, Innovation, the Cabinet Office. It's giving some sort of the policy advice to the government and also the Prime Minister's Office. And the Moonshot program is the Japanese government's new emblematic enterprise that the CSTI designated to organize state-of-the-art science and engineering technology into more disruptive, more innovative, or more kind of techno-social innovations. But to be honest with you, I'm not the person who initiated the Moonshot program. It is very thanks to the leadership, strong leadership of former Minister of Science Technology, Hirai Sensei, and also the Dr. Kobayashi from the Mitsubishi Chemical Holdings. And under this, the strong leadership, we have had 5 times the Visionary Commission meeting. In that, we had a lot of discussions. Sometimes I found so funny, so sometimes sound very stupid, but we had a lot of discussion. So, and also I have to say another person's name, Mr. AKAISHI, Koichi, his things here. He's a person, actually, who initiated the Moonshot program, got a funding from the Japanese government, and organized the teams, and made some sort of leadership in creating the Moonshot program. He's a sort of a crazy boy, and also he's a very adorable person, and one of the best friends of mine in my government, but he is a powerful person, and a quite different person from ordinary bureaucrats in Japanese government. So I'm very thanks to his effort to organize this Moonshot program. And since I joined the council in 2016, I have been thinking what kind of government support we will create very disruptive innovations. But it's so different from the private company investment of disruptive innovation because we are funded by the public money. And then in the course of listening to the discussion in the Visionary Committee meeting, I was very much became interesting, more and more interested in the Moonshot program. And I wrote concept papers about management of Moonshot program, which may be different from other type of government funding or government, the involvement of the science and technology investment. One of the difficult questions I face is that how you can create such a disruptive, radical, or risk-taking innovation by the public money. Public funding is also always a risk-averse because we have to explain how important this is, and also we have to guarantee that this is going to be 100% successful. It is so difficult. So in the course of discussing within my colleagues in the CSTI, and also finding out some sort of the resolution to solve these difficult questions, I made the policy making, the papers. CSTI is the headquarters office of creating 5-year basic plan for science, technology, innovation. Actually, it started in 2001. But before that, we enacted underlying law for basic law for science technology in 1995. In 1996, we started the first basic plan. And now we have considered 5 basic plan. This year, the intermediate year of the 5 basic plan, we are launching some sort of the next basic plan, which is going to be created or announced in 2021. And I really want to make this opportunity of organizing Moonshot is one of the pillars, policy pillars, in the forthcoming basic plan for science and technology, We have been now discussing a lot what is going to be a game change in creating Japan's or Japanese government newly launching basic program. And that probably within a year, we want to articulate very in detail what sort of the goals and also the purposes we are going to achieve from 2001, because the 5 years after 2001 is going to be a very crucial time period for Japan. Probably, if we fail after 2001, in the 5 years, I think that very much, I predict that it's so difficult situation to coming to Japan, I guess. So they're very serious about it. So that when I listen to the argument in the Regional Commission meeting, okay, this is maybe a good chance for Japan. And also that how we can convert the 100 assured money to risk-taking activities. And I have been thinking about it. I'm going to discuss about it. We call it the innovative management system, which is going to support the Moonshot program. You know, probably the best question is how best might be the public money promote such mission-oriented program, including disruptive risk-taking innovation, as I said before. You know, might be very difficult to persuade the financial authority, because even if we get money, because we got money, $1 billion for 5 years, but as many people said that, I can't say we're going to raise a lot of money to the financial department. We have to say that we are guaranteed that, okay, something coming up, also some important element must be cultivated with this risky money. And what kind of contribution we can make to the advancement of science, technology, innovation in this country, and also how much we can collaborate with international, scholars, researchers who are interested in pushing forward the science and technology into more disruptive, more radical, not incremental or cumulative investigations. This is a tough question I had. So I considered, okay, we don't see each project, each goals, each program as a whole package of different kind of component element or sort of the status. For example, like different type of research, various operations of works, diverse way of disseminating research data, innovative method for tracking the progress of research activities, cutting-edge approaches to the program, a new formation research team, etc. We're going to see each project as failure or success by looking at the whole package, not the single purposes, not a single goal. We're going to see the whole package is going to be evaluated. So this is kind of responsibility of a project director to articulate everything included in the project. Finding the data, finding the results, also find a way to disseminate any sort of the research to the outside world. Okay. Number two is a portfolio approach to the management. We're going to say that, we are going to look at the whole package of Moonshot program, meaning that we are going to see every different type of the risks of each project, finding a way, okay, this is a maybe 20% success, this is a 50% success, this is maybe 80%. So each PDs will be required to calculate and also articulate all type of risk management and report to the CSTI. We're going to evaluate that. We are not seeing a single package of success or failure. We are looking at all packages. And also, we want to discuss about the integrity, ethical issue, but it is different from the ordinary ethics of science and technology, because we are discussing about science, integrity, and reciprocities. Moonshot is going to often a global scale. So international standards and fraud prevention procedure would be vital in safeguarding integrity. But the standard of integrity, the standard of righteousness might be different among the different countries. In order to push forward the collaboration of researchers, international researchers, we need to find out the way to discuss about what is integrity, what is the reciprocity we can make among different countries, because we are providing the money to the international collaborations. So we're going to discuss it. And also ELSI, ethical, legal, and social implications is a big issue, but I don't want to get into detail because I have tons and tons of things to talk about it. But one of the sessions in the afternoon, we'll talk this, the ELSI matter. So probably the person who are in charge of the workshop, we discuss about it. Finally, when I consider about the Moonshot project, I thought this is a very good opportunity for us to get into the open science platform. Because open science is the scheme that EU or other country is creating and launching right now, the data sharing system. But I understand that each of the researchers doesn't want to open the data to anybody because the data is their own ownership. So I want to make this Moonshot project as a kind of the starting point to create a kind of completely different type of data sharing structures, giving an incentive to each researcher who involved with the Moonshot and acquires that the status of the researchers, guarantees them, and also to ask them to share the data. Data is going to be very important because the science is getting more and more data-oriented, but we don't have an exact instrument to share the data right now. So we're going to ask each researchers, a scientist, put some sort of signal or tag of each data he or she created, and share that kind of data tag among the researchers. It is a way to see the whole, see the Moonshot as a whole package, because other person maybe understand this data is very important for, for me. We approach as scientists. It is going to create some sort of international collaboration based on the data sharing. We have created already cloud computing, open sharing research out system, so that we already made a guideline on data management policy, and it's in collaboration with the National Informatics Institute. So here is one that we plan to provide a systematic methodology for assessing the whole Moonshot R&D package, maturing research ideas, coordinating them into the collaboration with other researchers and outside stakeholders. If you find anybody to become interested in the data which is created from the Moonshot program, this is a 1 point advantage that the research or the project will gain from the Moonshot investment. So in all, we are going to introduce a new management system in promoting disruptive innovation by means of government funding, comprehending program as a whole package, taking a portfolio approach to program management, and creating an evaluation system that accepts unexpected failures, building a new view to science, integrity, and reciprocity, and launching a platform data sharing and open science. It's going to be a scheme of open and closed strategy, which is created by the CSDI. The result of the Moonshot is becoming the asset for the CSDI, and will provide a powerful impetus to create the next basic form for science technology. It's going to be launched in 2021. Thank you very much. person? Next person will be talk.
Maybe.
I'm going to introduce. Okay, sorry. This is my job to introduce. So the first person, I'm going to introduce the first position talk, the person who is at, I forgot the name of the talk to.
I guess it's me.
It's me, yeah, sorry. Hamaguchi sensei? No?
Can I start?
Yeah, please.
Anyway, I would say we live in an era of instability where natural and man-made disasters can strike without warning, almost anywhere on Earth. This instability will become even more intense over the coming decades. We face a world of extreme environments, a world of unsustainable demographic trends, a world where powerful technology will dramatically impact our economies and ways of living. There are great risks, but also great opportunities. Opportunities to overcome seemingly impossible challenges through innovation, as we humans have done in every era. Today's science must do more than simply generating research results. We must now focusing on widespread human well-being as our ultimate goals. This is the core motivation for me for the Moonshot Research and Development Program. It is a new vision of what we can achieve with science for all people, for the future, and for well-being. With Moonshot, we can strike instability in a creative new way. We can direct cutting-edge research toward fundamental human needs, especially in our most vulnerable societies, and make science a powerful tool to promote well-being. It will require practical approach to research. It must be mission-oriented, with clear goals to achieve, and tangible benefit across all levels of global society. We must have a clear focus on the most important human needs and how to satisfy them. For this purpose, Moonshot must be an open platform in which a wide variety of stakeholders can share their visions and make their voices heard by welcoming a rich diversity in input. Our missions will be more appropriate to the demands of global society. We will promote diversity in geographically and academic field through close international cooperation among a range of global institutions. To maximize cooperation potential, data on the platform will be fair. That is, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Fair in short. Openness will accelerate the research process and the speed of bringing valuable new innovation to society. There will also be diversity in gender and age. We must create a barrier-free environment for our researchers to express their most creative and disruptive ideas, wherever and whoever they are. Among multiple programs we will try, the Millennium Challenge, I'm sorry, I'm cutting my tongue, is one of them. I want to draw your attention. It will be one key Moonshot vision that recognizes the importance of youth and female contribution. By nurturing both young and female researchers who work with creative and passion, we can tackle challenging food, water, disasters, and energy with a fresh approach and support the leaders of tomorrow in creating their desired future, I would say. We hope this will provide a vulnerable contribution to the sustainable development goals and successfully build on our current STI for SDGs initiatives, also contribute to Society 5.0. It is a time to discuss the role of science in our future and how Moonshot research and development can ultimately contribute to human well-being. I recall the word of late Dr. Tetsu Nakamura, who dedicated his life promoting human well-being in Afghanistan. He understands the value of 故郷で家族と毎日3度の飯を食べる in Japanese. Eat 3 meals a day at home with family. I think it's simple words that perfect capture the simple human needs. For Moonshot to truly serve humanity, our ambitious target must be ultimately help achieve this simple need. Of course, it is easier to say than do it. And the road ahead is made of challenge, but I believe with Moonshot we are taking one giant leap toward our goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So next portion talk will be the Wolfgang's. Yes. Well, Chris Paul, Dr. Chris Paul, yes.
Well, thank you again for having me and Department of Energy and some of our agency colleagues here with you to talk about moonshots. I think we had a nice discussion over lunch where we shared ideas, and our charge is, I think, to maybe offer some specifics from our individual backgrounds about lessons learned and perspectives. We heard nice stories already from Adam and from Maurice. What I'd like to do is be succinct and talk, sort of put on the table for discussion, and I hope we can have a nice discussion. 5 ideas that really come from the world of government and government funding and government management of high-risk, innovative programs. So this is a little different from the perspectives of my friends on the panel here, and we can talk about whether these are valuable for Japan's Moonshot effort. You know, take the ideas, leave the ideas. We found them to be important in our country, and so I'll offer those as points of discussion. I scribbled down 5. They all start with P. Protection, people, projects, participants, and policy. And this is not an exclusive list. They just sort of all happen to start with P. So, protection. In our country, starting with what's famously known as the Skunk Works at Lockheed Martin, a company, on to DARPA in the 50s and 60s, and on to agencies like ARPA-E in the Department of Energy, we've found it necessary to separate and protect special projects agencies. It's natural that special teams and special funding create jealousy and institutional antibodies, insulating those groups, that funding, from a larger organization, direct reporting to the leadership of the larger organization, jealously guarding the budget and the autonomy. Those are hard lessons that we've learned about protecting these agencies, and we can go into more detail about that. And oh, by the way, you know, they sit off by themselves. In order to benefit the larger agency, the technique, the answer is to rotate people through that agency. Let them gain experience on we saw I don't know if it was SEAL team or Special Forces, rotate these people through, give them experience, and seed that culture into the larger agency. Second issue is people. For special projects, for innovation, for moonshots, for prizes, people are critical. Program managers in government are critical, most important. We hire in these agencies program managers based on their ideas, their expertise and their ideas. The ideas for our moonshots, for our innovation agencies are bottoms up, not top down. The program managers are hired for specific terms. We don't bring people in as permanent government employees. We take the highest performing people we can find, give them a defined period, give them a defined amount of resources, and let them do their job. And that's really the secret to these agencies. It's very hard to explain often when folks come to visit and learn. Hire great people, give them the autonomy, give them the resources, and stay out of the way. And they leave. After 5 years, after some number of years, they leave. Okay? Important. Keep it fresh. Projects. Number 3, projects are staged. Major projects, major initiatives are staged. Goals of escalating difficulty. Teams are eliminated. Projects are eliminated based on performance. So those resources that are being used by teams that aren't performing as well get folded back into the more difficult goals, right? This is something famously done by DARPA in our country. Other agencies do it as well. There's really no guaranteed funding, frankly, no mercy. If the project is not performing, the project is eliminated. What's that? 3, 4, participants. It's really important that no one constituency, academia, the public sector laboratories, government laboratories, or the private sector feel like they own the resources for these large innovative efforts like moonshots, right? Oftentimes, the most successful teams will be a combination of these participants, but in any case, there needs to be equal access to all participants for the best ideas, the best plans, the best performance, and not reserve this for academia or industry or government labs. And this implies when you, particularly when you have commercial participation, robust attention to intellectual property issues and the opportunity for commercialization of technologies and ideas that are being developed. And I'll end with number 5, policy. Many times these agencies in our country need special authorities. It's not well appreciated that one of the real secrets of success for the original moonshot, for our Apollo program, is the superpower that our NASA has, and the superpower is actually a piece of legislation called the Space Act. And what the Space Act enabled for NASA was the ability of this government agency to get to yes, to design grants, contracts, relationships to answer a problem and not start with the toolbox and only answer the questions that the tools could allow. So this agency is very special in our government with the Space Act to create out of whole cloth relationships, including government funding, that are of benefit to the mission, to the people of the United States, and also to the companies involved. This idea of growing a commercial, this is why we have a robust commercial space industry. SpaceX is one of them in our country, is basically because of the Space Act. So I throw those 5 ideas out there and look forward to rounding this out with my colleagues here and having a nice discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. And next speaker, it is Wolfgang about us, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm really very honored to be part of this panel. I would like to congratulate the Japanese authorities for setting up this exceptional funding instrument and keeping it open for international cooperation. Commissioner Medas and Commissioner Gabriel have already pointed to the importance they attribute to the European Union Japanese scientific cooperation, and this instrument will certainly further deepen our scientific cooperation, also because of the similarities between the Moonshot initiative and the mission-driven research in our framework program. So let me shortly give you an overview of what we intend to do in terms of missions and how we intend to do it. Remember that the overarching objective of the next framework program for research and innovation is to address the Sustainable Development Goals. This is an overarching objective that is reflected in this structure of the next framework program, in this architecture. We will continue to finance frontier research in the first pillar, European Research Council, Maria Skłodowska-Curie. Then we have a big pillar that will address societal challenges and industrial competitiveness, where we in particular will address the Sustainable Development Goals. There are quite some clusters like health, like food, bioeconomy, agriculture, like climate, energy and mobility. And this pillar will be entrusted with very likely more than 15 billion euros. And we have a third pillar that is supporting disruptive innovation, bottom-up disruptive innovation without any specific purpose. So this is our architecture. And the mission-driven research will in particular be addressed in Pillar 2, not in Pillar 3, but in Pillar 2, because we consider that the missions which we will identify should address these big challenges. Now, what are missions? I think Commissioner Gabriel has already pointed out that is something that should improve society, should address concerns of citizens, and should have strong visibility and strong impact. Against that background, a mission is, according to us, a portfolio of actions across disciplines intended to activities, and the activities should be bold and inspirational and measurable goals within a set time frame, and evidently it should have big impact on society. This is how we define the missions. Here again, a short overview of what missions should be. They should be bold and inspirational. They should be targeted, measurable and time-bound, ambitious but realistic. They should be across disciplines, sectors and actors, and be based on bottom-up approach of multiple solutions. So far, the objective, the target of what we intend to do. Based on these objectives, the governments of the European Union, together with the European Parliament, have already decided mission areas. Please note that these are the mission areas and not yet the specific missions. These mission areas are cancer, soil health and food, climate neutral and smart cities, healthy oceans, seas, coastal and inland waters, and adaptation to climate change, including societal transformation. So why do I insist that these are the mission areas? Because we have set up a so-called mission board consisting of 15 independent experts chaired by very well-known either politicians or scientists, the task of which is now to fine-tune, to set out, hammer out the missions, the exact missions in the different areas I have just indicated. To this extent, they will rely on these mission boards, but their job is to interact with all kinds of stakeholders and citizens, organizing citizens events in all member states. This brings me to the question of how we intend to put it into place, these missions. The first key element is, and I think that has been already indicated in many respects, is that we need balance in terms of gender and in terms of geography. If you look at these 15 experts, they are coming, there is complete gender balance, and they are coming from all European member states. The mission board is not only composed of researchers and scientists, it is composed in addition of people from industry, from business, from the finance world, but also from stakeholders, end users, citizens representatives, such as patient organizations, for example, in the healthcare sector or in the where we want to address the cancer mission. So please note that our objective is really to consider that these missions are not only an endeavor in terms of research and innovation, but it's also about involving other players in this context. How will we go about? Evidently, as it was indicated, it will be a portfolio of actions that are the result of calls that will be published. Evidently, these competitive calls and the research done in the missions will not only rely on these calls, but their job is to also harvest the results of the different sectors here from basic research, but also from the disruptive research part. So I think that is a very important key element. In addition, research and innovation is at the core to achieve the relevance and the impact of the missions. But I think we should not underestimate the importance of appropriate financing tools to achieve these missions, and even maybe more important, the regulatory framework required to achieve these missions. Evidently, that will strongly depend on the objective that will be finally defined as a mission. But for many of these missions, it might well be that we need appropriate regulatory frameworks that provide the necessary incentives to achieve these objectives. And evidently, we need also financing. So research and innovation is core to our missions, but we intend to be broader in the sense that we really need to involve across the board stakeholders so that we cover not only research and innovation, but also citizens and acceptance of citizens. We need the appropriate regulatory framework, and we need the financial instruments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next person talk will be made by AKAISHI-san.
Thank you very much. I have to say really thank you to UEYAMA-san for introducing me a crazy boy. But actually, I'm a very national smart bureaucrat. But it seems that Moonshot program had been very weird for a Japanese government. So I had a very difficult years, a very difficult time to make it happen, actually make it happen. So for me, to make Moonshot project itself is a Moonshot project. You can understand how rigid the Japanese government is. And today I just want to let you know why we have started this difficult project and the challenge we face. First, the reason why we have started this project. You see, 2 years ago, there was news about the successful project of the satellite quantum encryption by China. This was a great shock, Sputnik shock for not only Japan, I think, even for the United States and the EU. We were thinking that encryption technology was basic science, still basic science, but the Chinese people are clever enough to be able to make it really happen. So this is one thing. We have to think about how to modify our basic science process itself. Second thing is that when you look at the IPCC report, it seems that people cannot reduce CO2 good enough to be able to avoid the increase of the temperature. It seems that we are anyway going to we'll have to live with the very hot atmosphere. Human beings might extinct. And actually, the capital of Indonesia, Jakarta, decided to move. And the capital of Egypt, Cairo, also decided to move because the human living environment is becoming more and more difficult to live for people. And third is that in order to make things happen, it is very difficult to make projects only by researchers or scientists or technicians. It is critically important to involve stakeholders, all the stakeholders, not only enterprise, government, but also NPOs, and especially a social scientist. So these are the reasons why we have to think about the new project, Moonshot project. And of course, important element of Moonshot project has been already told, the clear target or a global player involvement, and also a linkage between the applied research and basic science, and also science integrity is very important. But I just want to add another thing is about platform. Not only R&D data platform, but also Son-san of SoftBank stressed that importance of platform for AI or platform for DNA. So it is very important to make these kind of platform to make Moonshot project successful. And also I would like to ask all of you to come up with some answers about two difficult questions we face. First is, what kind of object is target is most appropriate for Moonshot? If it is too narrow, we cannot involve stakeholders. If it is too broad, the target could become unclear. If it is too short, it is impossible to realize. It is too long, nobody would become serious. It is too timid, it would not inspire anyone. And if it is too bold, it is not credible. And when it comes to the government project, UEYAMA-san have to explain why this target is selected. So the target making is one of the most difficult issues. That is why we have to have this kind of symposium. So please come up with the answer for the target. And the second is about the project director. I think the presentation of the colleague from EU, mission board system, I think this is very helpful for us. But project director is one of the most important person who is the key for the success of the Moonshot project. He should know substantial issue in terms of science and technology, and he should know the process, not only applied research, but also basic research. He should know the social system and rule, and he should foresee the future of the human beings and technology. He should have the humanity in order to involve stakeholders, and also he should have the ability to realize the target. And he should have the wisdom of old people, and he should have the vitality of young people. How dare we can find such a man or woman other than God? So this is another question which we face very seriously. Maybe all of you might be able to come up as a candidate for the PD. I hope. But anyway, I wish one thing. But it seems that all the world is wondering the same things. I was very surprised when I attended the so-called Falling Wall Circle this year in Berlin, along with Chris Fall and Ansari-san and you and Brussels guy. You also attended the, I think, Berlin Falling Wall. The subject of the Falling Wall Circle was from breakthrough to moonshot. So it seems that all the people all around the world are wondering about how to make the moonshot happen. So I wish this symposium would encourage us to think much more deeply about moonshot program, and would highlight at least clue or hint regarding difficulties and challenges we face. And also we hope this symposium also nature atmosphere that we are, as a global citizen in the same era and on the same boat, that we should construct or create this grand, colossal moonshot project design possible for the future of humankind. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We brought up very different type of the questions. Oh yeah, Maurice. Yeah, since I came to consider about the Moonshot program, I think that we have a lot of difficult social problems, such as environmental issue, the population issue, the aging issue. So how can the scientific advancement solve these kind of social challenges, global challenges? And I think the science alone is not enough, and the technological innovation is not the final goal. Industry alone, manufacturing alone, the engineering alone is not intriguing anymore. So we need to reframe sort of the mindset to discuss about the science contribution to the current world, and also what the science and technology can do for all of the people in the society. And then Moonshot might be one of the essence to bring these kind of issues on the table. But so I want to ask you to discuss about what expectation you have toward the Japanese version of Moonshot, which is might be different from your company Moonshot project, or also different from the United States, the DARPA, etc. So we just get some sense. And also, the second question I have in my mind is that the kind of balancing between the basic research and the mission-oriented research, such as the Moonshot. Because we need kind of really the basic science advancement to push forward the scientific frontier, but also we need to settle some sort of top-down themes, which is very mission-oriented, I guess. So we always have been thinking about a balance, what kind of balancing is optimal in discussing the allocation, the government funding to science and technology. So let me ask first, anybody raise up your impression about the Japanese version, the Moonshot, because you have already listened to a lot of discussion on the floor. Yeah, Ansari, please.
So one thing that I heard today from many of the speakers, and it highlights the importance and the uniqueness of Japan in this role, is that Japan is a fairly small country, but fairly strategic and plays an important role in the global innovation ecosystem. At the same time, as Masa-san was talking about, you will be facing a lot of the problems that the rest of humanity will face, but you'll be facing it probably earlier than some of the other countries. So I think this is a bold movement in terms of setting government behind a moonshot, which is not necessarily very aligned with usually government DNA, but it gives you an opportunity to create a coalition, especially what was described as looking at Southeast Asia as a base that faces similar types of problems, but lacks some of the resources that Japan has. And I think creating that coalition can actually shift the power of innovation in some areas and put it to practical use. And I think it has a great opportunity for advancement. So I think this is why I think there is a unique point in time, and Japan is in a unique geographic position and position in the entire society that can achieve that. So I think it's a great opportunity for Japan to step up, and I'm glad to see it happen.
Say about the Japanese Moonshot program. Also, that I want to talk about a kind of mission-oriented approach to the science and technology.
Well, I think one distinct advantage that Japan has is a relatively homogeneous culture and a relatively homogeneous collective consciousness. So, you know, a moonshot really implies an extraordinary effort, all hands on deck. If you think back to our Apollo program, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it consumed something between 3 and 4% of our GDP. Hundreds of thousands of people were working on this project to get man to the moon. It's a big effort. You have the natural benefit, the natural strength of, I think, being able to collectively orient towards a problem. I think that's great.
It means to you that Japan has some sort of advantage to get into this type of the mission-oriented.
Yeah, to choose a direction and to get the people behind it, you know, because as was said earlier today, I think one of the important aspects of a moonshot is to motivate support in the general public and to have an aspirational goal and a problem that everyone agrees on.
Yeah,
so.
I totally agree with you. But it's, you know, like we are getting together here to discuss the, you know, best the choice of the target of the moonshot, but also that in the process of the government that the funding is totally, you know, comes from outside. You know, we just discussed about the possibility of the moonshot, but it depends really on whether the Ministry of Finance agree or not, right? So the mission oriented tend to be a kind of top-down processes, but also we have to cultivate a kind of bottom-up, you know, approach to find out the best target of the moonshot program. So that the kind of tension between kind of mission-oriented and also the bottom-up, you know, approach of the science engineers. I guess it's always thinking about it. You know, what kind of the balancing would it be? It would be maybe ideal in discussing about the funding allocations through the government agency. Yeah. So, yes, please.
have a few thoughts about that, and this tension you describe between basic research and kind of a how you say mission driven. And I wonder if what's missing is a time component. I think this is actually quite dynamic, and it's not making a decision about how we're going to handle input from one group and input from another as a snapshot. But actually, it's a cyclical evolution over time. And it's more of a Silicon Valley reference, it's more middle out. And I think the resources that you need to pay attention to will be driven by the challenge that is immediately in front of you. So rather than design the program to, let's say, look to basic research for X, I think you'll find that as you begin to define a target, you will have to go to basic research to define that, help you define that target. And then as you work a little bit more, that activity will feel more mission driven. The mission will progress, and then suddenly you'll find yourself in need of new basic research. But you could not have known that on day one. And so you're constantly sort of bouncing back and forth, and the balance between these two forces is constantly shifting. And actually that can be a very efficient model. So rather than trying to predict and design at the outset, build a system that is flexible and can take advantage of the resources that are available.
Well, thank you, because in the lunchtime meeting, you mentioned that the important thing is the definition of each project, defining the time schedule of evaluating each process of the research is done. But also at the same time, we need a kind of really breakthrough in the basic sciences to cultivate next target or collaboration with outside the researchers, I guess. So I mean that sometimes it said that maybe 20% of government budget should be go to the basic science, purely curiosity driven, no answer at all. But also 80%, 70% should be taken care of a kind of mission driven thing. That's kind of tension is always happening within the government actually. Yes, Hamaguchi Sensei.
The side of funding agency, I think now we find a third type research. That is, in this case, basic research and applied science are very close. For example, case is Honjo Sensei's PD-1. He found the PD-1 molecule in the T cell. It turned out to be a very effective target for anti-cancer drugs. And now many patients can be cured by this dramatical drug. In this case, it's just from the start point, very basic. And one guy completed all the way. And the problem we observed is the connection between basic start point to the application. Sometimes we have to support well. Otherwise, it takes longer time. And in many cases, they fail if they don't have enough passion. So sometimes basic research in the applied science or mission-oriented is a very classical classification for me, sound like that.
But, currently we see that the very, very basic science, it's totally related to the applied science and also the production system. So I mean that the kind of the very linkage between these kind of processes, but also that the mission oriented is a mission from somewhere, save the earth, save the humanities. It's a kind of totally different type of the missions. Quite different from the commercialization, very different from the industrialization of science and technology. We are thinking, completely different type of mission we have to face. And this is a problem we have to solve, I guess, And that, Wolfgang?
Thank you very much. Indeed, the question how much top-down and how much bottom-up is a key question for every public funder. Take now Horizon Europe, we have about hopefully 100 billion, more than 50 billion will be challenge-based, so mission-driven, 30 billion will be around basic research, and about 15 billion will be disruptive innovation, but not only in terms of grants, but also in terms of equity funding, which is very important for us because we do not have the same venture capital situation than in other parts of the world. So how do you in such an architecture address the targets of the missions which we will define? Take soil health and food, for example. Evidently, you might have big achievements and progress in basic research relating to microbiome, which should evidently become part of the overall work on the mission soil health. But you also might have small and medium-sized enterprises in this context which need to scale up their business model because they have just discovered a disruptive way how to proceed. And as Minister AKAISHI has really pointed out, the challenge is for those who are looking at these missions really to collect all this wisdom that is around to progress the mission. Another element which I personally think we underestimate often, and this is why I insisted that to achieve missions, it is crucial that we have research and innovation. And by the way, all kind of research and innovation, because also incremental results might bring you closer to your objective. But I think what is even more important in terms of achieving, or equally important of achieving objective, is to ensure that policymakers and citizens in their behavioral change take up these scientific results. And that is equally important than to have these research results, because if they're not deployed, if they're not disseminated, we will not achieve the objectives.
Yeah, please.
I totally concur with all the people saying about the relation between basic research and applied research. And especially for Japan, Japanese people are very good at basic research. You see, every year we have a Nobel laureate. But when you see the social implementation, you can remember the chart of the Mr. Song. Japanese GDP is still increasing slowly. So it is very important for us to connect these basic research to the social implementation. And this is not only important for Japan, because the basic research would contribute to the fundamental problem of human beings, so it would contribute to the world. So this is one of the reasons why we have to try very hard in order to connect basic research to applied research until social implementation.
Well, like this year, Dr. Yasuno won the Nobel Prize, and actually from 2000, the number of the Nobel Prize actually increased, because I think that the Nobel Prize enters a different type of nomination, like particularly focusing on the industrial applications, looking at the patent or some other things. But I think that in 10 years, 20 years, I think the target to be nominated as a Nobel laureate may be the kind of mission-oriented research, because the world is demanding such kind of contribution science technology, so to the environment issue or to sustainable development, so that probably the mission-oriented research by the government is a next step to cultivate the different type of the science environment. I guess that's fine. Chris, you want to say something? Yeah, is this person?
Wanted to maybe mention what I've observed in terms of incentives is an important way to drive activity and an energy in certain direction. So for a lot of research scientists, winning the Nobel Prize, it's a great recognition and achievement. So the fact that in here you see a lot of people, being successful at you doing basic research and applying for that recognition, it's a testament to what the motivations are. So perhaps this program with the Moonshot thinking will create an alternative types of recognition for researchers. One other thing I've also experienced is that a lot of time researchers are not the best entrepreneurs because they are solely focused on solving a problem without really thinking of the business side and implications of turning an idea into a successful business. Not every great idea turns into great businesses, and it requires a different kind of talent. So one of the programs I'm also part of is Creative Destruction Lab with University of Toronto, where they have been able to successfully bring research scientists and innovators together with the entrepreneurial community, where they will get mentorship and support in order to look at ways of turning a great idea into businesses. So I think one of the things that has to be part of the program is an ecosystem that will help great ideas, innovations, moonshots to become successful businesses.
So you mentioned the Minister of Finance a few times. It's, you know, this constraint on this whole thing, and I think I totally agree that recognition can be incredibly motivating to people, and I think one of the things that's interesting about recognition is that it's free, right? So it doesn't, you know, maybe you need to pay for a prize, but that can be incredibly smaller in the amount than if you had to fund everything yourself, and so. I think it's worth really thinking about how some system can be structured to specifically focus on motivating people as opposed to funding everything. I also wonder how much there is to learn from the Apollo program, and are there ways to have this Moonshot program figure out how to motivate commercially oriented businesses or investors to align their interests to see what's in the way of them funding the technologies that are needed for some of these moonshots to succeed, and to work on breaking down those barriers so that the market can kind of do what it's supposed to do, and as little as possible can have to be funded from the government. Obviously, there will be a big government component, and that's part of why this is so important. But I think it's worth really focusing on, like, how can you make that money go as far as possible.
Yes, when it's come to the motivation of scientists and engineers, probably there must be a very variety. And also that maybe some people maybe want to get into the commercialization for the first, but also other person maybe prefer a kind of autonomy to scientific research, etc. But so I want to ask some other question about the stakeholders of the Moonshot program, because we are going to invite the researchers, top-ranked researchers from all over the world to join this program. And also the collaborate with the Japanese, excellent researchers to make a kind of distinct goal should be achieved with this funding, actually. So we want to diversify the participant as much as possible. So we want to invite other foreign researchers as a PI, of course, some sort of giving us some sort of responsibility of looking over the project, and also finding the time schedule or finding a way to articulate everything from the project, actually. So I want to ask, with women and also even the youngsters, like undergraduate, maybe want to involve with this program, I guess. We want to really encourage the youngsters, kind of millennium issues, I guess. Do you have any sort of a comment on this kind of scheme we are planning right now? Any person, right? Yes.
You mentioned youngsters, and I think they're obviously an incredible resource. And on my last team, I had a number of millennials, bless them. And the thing about younger folks I'm finding these days is that they are very much purpose and mission driven, deeply. So I think that's something I would tap into if you want to involve that community. I think you'll find that's how you will attract the very, very best talent that has the opportunity to go anywhere they want. It's by providing them the opportunity to really have impact at a very large scale. And I think you will see them flock to you and give you their very best energy.
Sensei, and then answer.
In our case, we have special program called Act X or Act I. In this program, we offer funding money to master student. And what we found is they're very ambitious and active and sometimes solve very difficult problems in mathematics and information technology. And they're really talented. We should support them. They might lose their talent after all when they are aged. So we need support them.
In terms of gender diversity specifically, and especially when we talk about the scientific and technical fields, I think it's important to make sure that you just don't state that we want to be diversified, that you have to make an effort, an extra effort to attract the type of diversity you want to the program. These are deeply rooted, century-old cultural issues, societal issues that has created the problem of lack of diversity. And it will take time for this problem to solve itself. Meanwhile, in order to have that, you have to actually seek the best, for example, female scientists, and invite them to join. Because one thing I've noticed, especially with women that I work with, super, super smart women, but if you ask them, they don't sometimes think, because of the society beating up on their head, is that they don't feel like they're as smart. So they may not have the confidence to apply. So there must be a effort to invite them to join. And then once they join, I think they can prove themselves. I'm not worried about that part. But the first part of it, to get the diversity you want, you have to have very specific programs to bring people into it, whether it's age diversity or gender diversity. One other thing about diversity I wanted to mention, one thing we found at XPRIZE is not only the scientists, but when you talk about diversity, it's great to invite people from the fringe areas. For example, if you're looking at something in the food and agriculture, to bring people from the medical field, from health and nutrition field, from fringe areas, adjacent areas to the conversation, helps enrich the conversation. And we even bring scientific writers to the program to help people to really think in advance and do moonshot thinking of things that are potentially seem to be not possible because they're science fiction. But if they don't break laws of physics and laws of science, then they should be possible. So it really pushes the boundaries that way.
I just want to ask Maurice if he ever hired someone from Burning Man.
It's possible, yeah.
Well, there's sometimes that it's so way because I really want to invite a kind of top-ranked research scientists from all over the world to the not Japanese National University. They find some difficulty that because the distance, psychological distance between, for example, United States and Japan in terms of the science technology, so remote, so wrong. Because once of course, we can support anywhere, like the education of the children or housing, etc. But also the kind of psychologically different, or maybe you may say the cultural difference. And if you decide to leave the United States, come to Japan and talk, maybe sometimes you feel like ostracized from the center of research, etc. So I mean, how can I, invite these kind of top-ranked researchers to the Moonshot program as a PI, etc. That's kind of one of the very important issue for us. Yeah, please.
I just would like to come back on the point that Anousheh has raised. I think in our place we make the distinction firstly. As I indicated, we are trying to identify now exactly the scope of the missions. We have the area, but we have to identify the missions. And in that context, this mission board will really play a key role. And as I've pointed out, we are looking really at equality, male, female. We are looking at the right geographical distribution, but we are also looking, when it comes to the researchers who are part of these mission boards, on the interdisciplinary nature of these researchers, so that we get the topic for the missions right. We have public policy people involved so that they know what we should address these elements. The next question then evidently is, so we have this broad involvement down to the citizens in the design of the mission. But then we, at one point in time, we will have competitive calls, in fact, because this is how we intend to put it into place through competitive funding, through a project portfolio. And then the question arises, who should be part of the researchers who address then the challenges? And then I think the question again comes back. And what I personally realize is that we all agree about the diversity of research teams. But evidently, in terms of governance, it's making things increasingly difficult, in fact. But I think we cannot, if we want to achieve results, we have to face this complexity of working together, and you cannot, for purposes of simplification of doing research, renounce on the diversity of having participants in place. So I think that is the challenge for public funders, that they should reach out very broadly, in fact, which in terms of governance is not always an easy stuff.
The government to think about the kind of processes you mentioned that. The other person, any person. Yep.
Back to the diversity. We have the data that if we compare the patent made by men only or patent made by mixed gender, we have clear data. Mixed gender patent is much more competitive compared with male only made patent. But problem is again patent. If we invite foreign researchers to these projects, patent is critical issue, naive issue, where and how much these patents should be fixed. And one case we have a kind of solution at present is WPI. In Japan, it's a special program. We invite a foreign talent to, as a PI, to WPI Center, World Premier Institute. And in this case, a full professor or partly 2 months or 3 months stay in Japan, we offer the position. And in this case, patent should be goes to the university, invite the research. It's really difficult to solve the patent control. It's another issue when we make these want to be innovation to be international as one.
So that I remember that the 80s when I was at Stanford University to do the PhD. The Stanford was a world of male-dominated world, actually, white men. And then I returned to Stanford in 2000. I found that 1/3 of the faculty members at Stanford were foreign-born. And also maybe more than 1/3 were women faculty members. It's changed a lot during the 2 decades, actually, in the United States. But also that something quite similar, transformation maybe occurred in this country. So we need to consider the Moonshot program as a kind of one of the experimentations of changing the academic cultures by inviting all different type of the stakeholders to the Moonshot program, I guess. Yeah, and also that I want to ask about a kind of the management style we propose, actually. So now in a lunchtime session, the both of the guy gave us a quite interesting, scheme to, cultivating kind of data, sharing system within your company, and also giving some sort of incentive to researchers. And that Could you explain the Ansari and also the, and also you mentioned that the definition is quite important, right? And
Yeah. I mean, I start with a definition. Even a lot of this discussion, I think, becomes much more clear once you have a defined project. You know, that said, at Alpha, for instance, it took a team of, you know, we had 15, 18 people whose unique job it was to define new moonshots. They were hired from around the world, trained to do just that. They were very good at it. And it would take us, for a fully developed candidate ready to be called a moonshot, would usually take between a year and 18 months. You know, Kennedy, in a way, had it easy. When you asked him, what's your moonshot? He said, well, land a human being on the surface of the moon. That's so crystal clear. And come back, yeah, and bring them back, if you can. So that was so crystal clear, you know, that I think was responsible for the possibility of eventual success. And so I think that should be something that is has a lot of energy and focus put behind it at this point in time. We were talking about accountability because as a public funding mechanism, accountability is very important with, you know, the Minister of Finance, the aforementioned Minister of Finance, poor guy. Accountability and this incredibly specific definition. And you said, oh, so you have a micromanagement style. And if you knew me personally, nothing could be further from the truth. I'm very hands-off. And I think that's also important. So be very clear on the goal. Be very clear on how you're going to measure progress. And then stop. Let go. Leave them alone. Chris, I want to build on what you said. I'm a huge believer in protection. You know, the most successful groups that have done this kind of thing have always been separate, often secret. At my 2 jobs ago, I was doing applied research in a lab on a pier on the San Francisco Bay. And when we opened the lab, the company has about 10,000 people in it. Only 6 people could open the door with their cards. And there were 5 of us on the team, actually 7 people. So it was my team, the CTO, and the CEO. And so the executive vice presidents would come and try and get in the lab, and they'd have a big important customer with them they wanted to show. We had these robots doing crazy things, and the door wouldn't open, and so he would be confused, and he would knock on the door, and I would open the door, just stick my head out and go, oh, hey, Chris, how's it going? He goes, hey, I have this customer, one of our biggest customers, can we come in and look at the robots? And I go, oh, I'm really sorry, we have some confidential stuff, I can't let you in. And which was semi-true. Having this firewall gave us a lot of freedom that we needed at the beginning, where ideas are very fragile, very susceptible to someone coming in and going, this is stupid, shut everything down, kill the entire operation. And then so we kept it completely closed for maybe about a year, started to demonstrate some success, and then we completely opened the door. We had press come in. We were having, front page of things like Wired and so forth, inviting. So then the vice president would come in, and it was a big celebration because we had proved that we had done something interesting. There was something solid enough to open it to the world. So this idea of protection, I think, is critically important in the corporate world. I think maybe here it'll be a little bit different, but definitely agree with Chris on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. How about Ansari? You mentioned about the content sharing system you are creating right now.
Yes, so I think starting with the framing, we spent a lot of time at the XPRIZE to make sure that we define the problem very clearly. We take our time at the beginning to really understand the problem itself and understand what are those maybe 2 or 3 areas that if you push those 2 or 3 areas that you actually can shift and solve the problem. And we make those a criteria that has to exist in the solution. We don't prescribe how to solve something, but we say you have to solve for these 3 or 4 things specifically. So that's a very important part of the process. The other thing that we do is our process of looking at how teams progress is through these milestones we set. At the beginning, the registration is open. Anyone can participate. The more people that registered, the happier we are, because we truly believe in crowdsourcing innovation the way we do our competition. Once they apply, then we look at the paper submission and we evaluate the merits of the paper submission. Our judges, an independent panel of judges. And once you pass that criteria, usually if we had 300 teams sign up, we go down to maybe about 150 teams. And then the rest of the competition, which takes maybe 3 to 5 years, those are the ones that go to the next stage. And then for a while, they just go on building their solutions, and we just keep just being there to support them until we get to a milestone where they have to demonstrate out of those, let's say 3 things, we pick one thing that's the easiest one to demonstrate and say, okay, demonstrate you've actually made this one happen. And at that point, the 150 teams goes down to maybe 10 or 15 teams. And that's the point where we give them money. That's also a way for us to control how we disperse the investment. So they will get some money that becomes their seed funding, basically, to go and finish building their prototype. And then those 15 or 20 teams are the ones that go to the finals, basically, and the first place and the second place is given to them. Sometimes we see nuggets of innovation that comes out of a team. They may not have won the prize, but they've come up with some breakthrough technologies, and then we reward them with Moonshot awards. So this way, we don't just reward one team. We do really seed the 15, 20 teams. And when we looked at it, looking back after a prize is won, maybe 2 or 3 years later, we sometimes saw that maybe the third place runner-up had a better technology, they just couldn't make it in the time frame. But now they're a thriving company and they've done well. So really those 20 teams that made it to the semifinals are all viable businesses, viable teams that have built something significant.
You know, so important and so difficult task, probably the PD, project director or the manager is. And one of our main concern is how to find a good PD or PM. Probably these are all candidates of the PA and came together here, discuss about the possibility of to be in a PD or something. But it's also that we need to foster the next generation of PD, who is going to in charge of probably the next stage of the Moonshot after 5 years, I guess. So I think the AKAISHI-san will get some additional money after 5 years, and then, so we're gonna start another Moonshot project in 2025 or something like that. Yeah.
We have our PD here, if you promise not to steal him. David Locke, who's going to be at one of the breakout sessions. You can ask him about his advice on that.
The other person about the kind of the formation of the project and also management style. Any comment on that? So that I wrote the papers called the management of the Moonshot because I have been very concerned about what the role the government can play in creating such a kind of risk, taking researches, because it's a tax-paying money. And also we always need to discuss with the financial authorities to launch this kind of very high risk and high reward system. It is so difficult actually. Thanks to the AKAISHI-san, we got the money. And thanks to other person in the Prime Minister's office, I can't say the name of it right now, but this kind of it is very kind of political issue, the constraint we have to face, so that we really want to make Moonshot successful. And as I said in my plenary explanation, I want to make Moonshot as as a kind of experimentation of a policy making in SDI. So the message I want to convey is that the Moonshot project is the moonshot for R&D, but also the moonshot of policy making in science technology in Japanese government. So that I want to say. And also, I have 5 minutes, left. So probably I want to raise up any other questions, comment, and also expectation toward the Japanese moonshot. So that maybe Akaishi-san may want to give any comment on that.
Just one comment. Ueyama-san, you are in the driving seat, and if you fail, we will be fired. So take it this seriously.
I said he's a crazy boy. Really the crazy boy. I like the crazy idea, crazy, the inclination, but it was my happiest time to find Akaishi-san in Japanese government. It is totally different type of bureaucrats I found. Anyway, so that can I ask one more question to you, because this is my main concern. It's as I said again and again, the data sharing. The data is going to be very, very important in making any sort of a policy from the government, and it's so difficult to deal with data sharing, and also difficult to persuade all of the researchers to share the data. So we create a kind of the infrastructure of sharing the data, but most difficult thing is how to give incentive to the researchers to think about the sharing of the data. You mentioned, yeah.
Well, our hypothesis, what we've observed through the work of the teams, the competitions, and also how we collaborate, is that when you have a common goal, scientists, engineers tend to actually they're open to sharing as long as they get recognition. I think recognition is important. So what we've done is we're creating in our platform a way for people to contribute and share their data, but still maintain ownership of that data. So they know who is accessing the data, who is using the data. And if their data combined with other scientists, results in a breakthrough, results in new knowledge through AI and machine learning platforms they're using, then they will be able to get the recognition for it. So I think that's important. As a scientist, I think your mission is to solve the problem. And if getting access to other people's data by sharing your data will help you get to the final destination faster, I think you will find a lot of scientists open to doing that. In our competitions, we've always seen even teams that are competing end up behind the scene helping each other out, because ultimately a lot of the moonshots you're going after, they're moonshots for humanity, and solving the problem will ultimately benefit everyone. So I think you will see a lot of collaboration there.
The data sharing is important, not only for the scientists, but also the data sharing of governmental data is really going to be very seriously important, because it's not only about the medical care system, but also any sort of data. Actually, since I joined the council, I found government has a huge, huge amount of data, and it is stored in somewhere. Nobody knows. So we really want to make transparent the data we hold and share the data with the entrepreneurs and then the startup companies or big companies that are outside the government, because we call this kind of government 2.0, the different type of government. So the e-government, or sort of the kind of transparency of all asset Japanese government has been accumulated to a very, very long time, and that's maybe the final goal of the policy making in the government. But also I really want to make Moonshot as a kind of kickoff event to make a kind of sharing system of data which is going to be a very contributive to the advancement of science technology, but also kind of the contribution to the solving the problem in the world, I guess. So, mean that when I wrote the paper, concept paper, I have such kind of intention that. So I wanna share the concept with all of the people come here, and then that consider about what the role of the government is, and also what the role of the project director, the managers should be, and also how to formulate the forthcoming any of the program that we are going to funding aggressively. And also today I'm very happy to know that AKAISHI-san guaranteed that the next second term of the Moonshot will be provided, I guess, in 5 years. So I'm very, thank you very much for joining this session. Just time is running up. And if you have time and interest, that I hope you read the concept paper. It's a kind of main, kind of concept to organize the Moonshot program. So that in the next session, we are going to get into detail of the many type of target goals. It's numbered already more than 25 goals, and then classified a separate type of the directions. And it's gonna be very exciting, read by the Kitano-san, I guess. So thank you very much for coming, joining, and I really enjoyed that. Thank you very much.